There's a setting right here on the Airbnb platform that almost every Airbnb host in the world uses, and if you hit filters here and scroll down, you can see how almost every guest uses it too. And Airbnb has been lying about this one feature. It's called Instant Book. It has caused a nightmare for hosts who do not understand Airbnb's terms of service and what Instant Book actually means. In this video, I promise you're going to learn one of Airbnb's darkest secrets with their most commonly used feature. Let's jump in. Airbnb may have made the worst decision that they've ever made a long time ago for the sake of company growth as a way to get people to book more stays on Airbnb. Not every single host uses the Instant Book feature because some hosts come from HomeAway and from VRBO, way old school, where they wanted to vet all of their guests before allowing anyone to stay. This was normal in the short-term rental space, and I do believe that Airbnb did not initially have the Instant Book feature way back in 2010 and 11, but they created this feature strategically to make it easier for guests to find a listing that they like and book it right away without them having to stop, wait, and communicate with the host. Those few minutes could be the difference between booking on Airbnb for the first time or going to a hotel. So Airbnb decided to do what Apple would do, which is get it so that way a guest can have their product in just a few clicks or less. But ever since Instant Book was created, they've had a long, dark, and dangerous history with activity on Airbnb because of Instant Book. In the very early days of Airbnb, before it was popular, this wasn't such a big deal. A lot of the guests were counterculture, were a little hipster, were big into tech, super nerdy people that wanted to try something new and liked the idea of staying in a place that wasn't a hotel. In a way, Airbnb was able to capture a trend, which was the ethics of staying with a homeowner instead of a hotel, instead of giving more money to big corporations. So the people that adopted Airbnb early on were idealists. They were not the kind of people to cause trouble. They were super polite, they were patient, they would deal with host issues because they understood they were staying with someone that was not a business. And early on, this was Airbnb's biggest advantage. Stay with the host. You remember the branding. And no one ever pictured that this one setting that allowed so many good guests to join and use and enjoy the platform would become the one setting that would absolutely crush Airbnb just before COVID and then after COVID. The Instant Book feature is one of only two settings that has a massively high correlation with house parties on Airbnb: Instant Book and one-night minimum stays. Airbnb could not stop parties from happening. At this point, they were too big and they had a systemic problem. There was no way that they could capture every single bad guest before they threw a party. There's no way to know. They were still kind of too new to be able to find out which guests who did not have a criminal record wanted to throw a house party. There's no real means of prevention. Airbnb has long had a public stance that they try to keep to this day, but they quietly contradict, which is their anti-discrimination policies. They do not let hosts prevent parties by not allowing locals to book. So if you have a house in Baltimore, you cannot say that no Baltimore locals are allowed to book. You cannot say travelers only, because that is a form of discrimination. But Airbnb's booking algorithm now prevents locals from booking houses because it's a party risk, and then instructs those guests to book a hotel room instead. This alone was not enough to prevent parties. You saw it in the news in 2018 and 19 where people were getting killed at Airbnbs for gunshots at house parties. And Airbnb committed to prevent parties by updating their software to prevent these parties. But then lo and behold, COVID hit, their party prevention algorithm did not work, and parties ran rampant all over the country after COVID. And parties inside of Airbnb is the one largest cause for the reason why cities are trying to ban or regulate Airbnbs. If you look at cities like Philadelphia or Chicago or Los Angeles or even here like Dallas, there are so many news articles talking about parties happening in properties and locals being furious. And then you'll see more articles about the same locals going to their local governments to try to shut down Airbnb. If it wasn't for house parties, Airbnb would not have a growth issue, they would not have a regulations issue. Because even though hotels are actively trying to shut Airbnbs down, Airbnb served the argument up on a silver platter by allowing people to instant book houses without creating any real controls or educating their hosts on how to prevent parties. For example, most hosts don't know this, but you can disallow or prevent people from booking and staying at your place based on their age. The reason why is Airbnb's global policy is unable to enforce an age-related restriction. This is because country to country, there are different regulations about people booking their own accommodations by age. Airbnb cannot define that 18 is the minimum or 21 is the minimum. And because they cannot define a blanket minimum, they cannot force you to abide by any minimum age. You're allowed to, in your property, state that your minimum booking age is 25 years old or 30 years old if you want to do that. But this is all just a backstory to how Airbnb massively blew it after COVID and failed to properly disclose terms and conditions that Airbnb hosts absolutely needed to know, and they borderline misrepresented a new feature that they just launched last year, and it's causing hosts a ton of headache. Airbnb changed their settings to be more relaxed on Instant Book. There used to be a section with 3 separate checkboxes where if you had Instant Book on, you could exclude people in 3 different ways from being able to Instant Book your place. If they did not have a validated photo on their account, a government ID, and read a pre-booking message, there's possibly another one, but it's been a while. Those settings would prevent somebody from being able to instant book, just out the door. But beyond that, Airbnb has other settings that prevent people from instant booking that Airbnb hasn't properly disclosed, and Airbnb hosts don't understand how this works. And this is the heart of the problem. So not only did Airbnb take away some of the granularity with our ability to prevent instant booking and switching it only to this button called Good Track Record, which they're lying about that as well, they also did not tell you that people cannot instant book for other reasons and that some bookings will come as requests. I'm going to explain this if that sounded confusing. But let's first stop at Good Track Record. Airbnb has made it so that way people who only have a good track record can instant book when you click that button. But ever since that setting came out, Airbnb hosts are finding that people are able to instant book if they have 0 reviews, meaning that good track record and no track record are the same thing to Airbnb on the platform. And this has become a huge problem for hosts that were fine with not using Instant Book in the first place, but they gave Airbnb their trust because they believed that this new feature did exactly the same thing that they were doing with Instant Book off in the first place, which was checking to make sure that people had a good track record and no bad reviews. But 0 reviews is still a very risky guess, and I know a lot of you know that to be true. And even if you're an experienced host with a suspicious mind, there are still other settings that are going to trick you, or might have already tricked you before. And you've had the occurrences where guests are showing up to your property at 11 a.m. trying to check in, when you never said that they could check in at 11 a.m. And when you go to Airbnb about this, they cancel that guest and give them a full refund and charge you their new host cancellation penalty because you violated terms of service and you have no clue what's going on. This is happening to hosts everywhere, and this is what is happening. Anytime a guest finds your listing and does not meet instant book requirements, they can send a request. And one of those booking requirements can be the time of day that someone wants to check in. So if your check-in window is from 4 p.m. to midnight, or say 4 p.m. to 9 p.m., someone can send a booking request to check in either after 9 p.m. or before 4 p.m., as early as 10 or 8 a.m. And Airbnb makes no attempts to tell you why this person is not instant booking, but is requesting instead. And because of all of these Airbnb fiascos in the news and their constant changes to their Airbnb settings twice a year, you're probably thinking that this person is making a request because they don't have enough good reviews. So you go look at their listing, you try to look at their thumbnail photo, which you can't see, you go look at their reviews to try to find out if there's an issue with the reservation, you look at the dates, and you go, this reservation seems fine. I don't know why Airbnb would not allow this as instant book. Click accept. But what you did not see, because Airbnb keeps it in very small print, that the guest has requested to check in from 9 a.m. until 11 a.m. and then at that point, they arrive at 11 a.m. or earlier before the other guest even checks out and your housekeeper hasn't had a chance to clean, and now you're in trouble with Airbnb because you accepted that reservation in the first place, and now it's your fault. There are more settings that Airbnb has done a terrible job explaining to hosts, like the Airbnb AirCover loss of income protection, for example. Airbnb does not make this obvious, and they don't care to explain to anyone how this works, but Airbnb loss of income protection only applies to if someone does damage to your property or does a holdover where they don't leave on time or loses the keys, and you have to cancel another Airbnb reservation because you cannot fix it in time. Airbnb does not pay you if you have to cancel a VRBO booking or a direct booking, or if you have to block dates. This can mean that if an Airbnb guest burns your place down or gives you bed bugs or steals all of your stuff, and you only have 2 or 3 future reservations over the next 3 weeks, you can only cancel those 3 bookings and get paid for those. Even though your listing could be down and out for multiple months, Airbnb won't pay you for the time that it's off the market in total. And that's something you all should know and be careful for. And wait, there's more. In addition to these, Airbnb has made some crazy changes over the last couple of months since their winter release. If you want to know all about Airbnb's newest updates to the platform, watch this video next. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. You're my favorite people, and as always, I will see you on the other side.